Colors, curves. I can select any of the channels, and there are also the two buttons, the two resets, one for all channels altogether and one for the selected channel only. This grid represents the histogram. I can click or I can drag any point inside. I can define the starting point, I can move it. I can define the end point and any point in between. On the horizontal axis, I have the input levels, and on the vertical, the output levels. Both these axes represent values from 0 to 255, as we can see the shade from black to white. When the dialog initializes at first, I get a straight line between the two extreme points, the point 0, 0 and the point 255, 255. All actions inside here can be made with the mouse or any device that controls the pointer. Okay, I have now the same problematic image shown in the previous video about the levels tool. If I have this preview checked, I can make my actions keeping an eye at the same time on the image and on the histogram. My first action is to drag the starting point in this image where the information begins, right here, so as to get an histogram which seems to be balanced at first. And as I did with the levels tool, the second action is to play with the brightness a bit by defining a midpoint between. If I drag the curve down, the image gets darker. If I drag the curve up, the image gets lighter. And in this action, the good thing, like with the levels tool, is that the 2 points remain untouched, so I avoid clipping on both sides. So on the curve I can define new points and drag them or move them at will. Another interesting thing right here is to handle the contrast. If I want to increase the contrast, I will decrease shadows and increase the highlights. Instead, if I want to make my image more flat, to decrease the contrast, I am going to decrease the highlights and boost the shadows. So, by defining any number of points on the curve, I can focus on certain tonal ranges. Let's say, for example, that in this image there are too many highlights and I want to suppress them a bit, so I go here on the highest tones and do this action. Okay, you need to play in these cases and see very carefully what's happening on your image. This tool is very powerful and it offers some possibilities that might not be apparent from the first sight. For example, if I invert in this way the endpoints, what I am actually doing is to invert the colors, so I get a negative. One more feature of this dialog is that right here in this place you always have the corresponding values for the coordinates of your moving pointer. And also you have two modes to work, smooth mode and freehand mode. In freehand mode you have the absolute control to draw your curve as you want it on any tonal range. If now I return to the smooth mode, I even have some handy curves to work on. Now, one more thing for this excellent tool. when the curves tool is active, the pointer gets the form of this eyedropper, and it can be used for sampling. If I click somewhere on the image, I instantly get a vertical line on the exact position for the specific value and on the specific channel. If I shift-click on the image, an anchor point is created on the specific channel. If I control-click, anchor points are created for all channels. If after the click I do not release the mouse but move it on the image, the line constantly updates, and only when I release the button I get my anchor point. The intention of these sampling actions is to define certain points on a curve in order to conduct precise adjustments.